I think the world wants to paint this picture that it's just sex.
Right.
It's just literally your physical body's touching. Like it means nothing. And you can have sex with anyone as much as you want. And you need to test drive the car before you buy it. And you need to go out and get experience and learn it. And it's like, man, God has saved that for marriage. God has saved that for the covenant that he ordained. And there's a reason for that.
A disclaimer also, if you have experienced sex outside of marriage, there's no shame in that.
No.
I mean, the Lord wants so badly to wipe your slate clean and can give you such a pure and powerful sex life with your spouse despite what has happened in the past.
Yes, absolutely. What's up, everybody? Welcome back to The Greater Marriage. We are so glad that you're here. Today is a fun one of my favorite topics that we've ever covered, because today we get to talk about sex. And
don't you just want to sing the song?
Let's
talk about sex,
baby. Let's talk about you and me. I mean, come on. If you're a 90s kid, if you are close to our age, we'll say mid-30s, born in the late 80s or early 90s. Heather was born way before I was, but much earlier in the 80s than I was. But yes, we love this topic. We love to talk about sex. And
the world loves to talk about sex.
The world for sure loves to talk about sex.
I was in the car in the pickup line yesterday, and I turned on...
listening to worship music, surely.
2000s hip-hop. Okay,
Hold
that's my
on.
guilty pleasure.
Yes, if y'all need greater family, if y'all need to know anything about Heather Miller, it is that she loves, number one, Nelly. We are from St. Louis.
Love Nelly.
We love Nelly and St. Louis. And she loves just early 2000s hip hop. Anything early 2000s hip hop. I mean, Luda,
it's
Usher,
so inappropriate,
Nelly.
but so good. You know, some people, they like trash TV. I like trash 2000s hip hop
and trash TV.
But I was listening to songs. I just did put on a random playlist and was kind of mortified at some of the songs because, well, for starters, I know all the words to all of them.
For sure.
And
but you've never registered what they're saying.
Yes. You know, when you have kids, you just think about things differently.
Oh, yeah.
And
for
some
sure.
of the, I was just jamming out and then listening to some of those lyrics. Dear God, please forgive me for dancing to these songs.
When I was 14.
14. I had no idea. Man. I was innocent. Anyways, we all love to talk about sex.
We do. And so I am excited about this topic because it is a fun topic. We are going to keep it lighthearted. But it is a very serious topic. I think that this is one of those things, we are three-part beings. We've talked about this before, that we are spirit, soul, and body. And the body is important. And it's funny that in the order of relationships that God laid out, the body came last. The physical part of our relationship is something that is saved for marriage, right? There's value in it. And God saved it for the covenant of marriage. And so, we've talked to other couples about this before. When Heather and I started dating, she had been married before and had only experienced sex inside of marriage. I was not a virgin. Sorry, Mom and Dad, if you're finding that out right now. I had experienced that outside of marriage. And so when we came together, we made the decision no, we're going to do our relationship the right way, and we are going to wait until we're married, and we did. And I believe that there's a blessing.
We weren't perfect.
No.
I'm going to say that too.
No, by no means. We did hold hands.
We know people who saved their first kiss for their wedding day.
It was not us.
Wow, more power to you.
In fact, we were talking about this just the other day in front of our kids, not the sexual part, about us.
Dinner table conversation.
Dinner table, talking about us dating, and the kids love to ask questions about us when we were dating and things like that. And one of our kids, or I think Noah Grace, our daughter, our 6-year-old, said something to the effect of talking about us getting married. So, Daddy, that's the first time you kissed Mom, when you guys got married. And I was like, Nope, I did kiss Mommy before we got married. And she's like, just once? So that was the second time you kissed her? I was like, Nope, kissed her a whole bunch. Nope, I really liked your mom, and we kissed a whole bunch before we got. Not encouraging you guys to do it.
But you are not allowed to kiss until
You are not allowed to do
you're in
that.
your
But
20s.
yes, so there's something sacred about sex. Obviously,
Yeah.
God wanted to save that for marriage. We're going to talk about some of the ways that God created us and how sex affects our physical bodies. It is crazy how it affects us. You know, I think the world wants to paint this picture that it's just sex,
Right.
and that you can it's just literally your physical body's touching, like it means nothing, and you can have sex with anyone as much as you want, and you need to test drive the car before you buy it, and you need to go out and get experience and learn it. And it's like, man, God has saved that for marriage. God has saved that for the covenant that he ordained, and there's a reason for that.
Yes.
And there's
but
there's
if
go ahead,
you
go ahead.
have a disclaimer also, if you have experienced sex outside of marriage, there's no shame in that.
No.
I mean, the Lord wants so badly to wipe your slate clean and can give you such a pure and powerful sex life with your spouse despite what has happened in the
Yes,
past.
absolutely. And it's funny. We actually we have some great friends of ours that had pretty wild upbringings and pretty wild, in high school and college were pretty wild, and we're actually living together, right? And while they were living together, had this desire to get into church. I think she was raised in church, he wasn't, and they really weren't going to church at all. And their story's unbelievable. Maybe we'll have them on to share sometime because their story's just incredible. I don't want to give too much away, but they were living together, started to go to church, turned their lives around, began to follow Jesus, and said, the way we're living is wrong. We need to get married. God engaged and decided from that moment that they were not going to have sex until they got married.
Yeah.
Obviously, their situation was different because they owned a home together. They slept in the same bed and still made the decision, we're going to live in our home, we're going to sleep in our bed, and we are not going to have sex until we get married.
Willpower.
And had like a decently long engagement and stopped having sex the moment they felt that conviction, and didn't do it again until they got married. And just the way that we've seen God bless their lives and bless their marriage, and the influence they have with other married couples, and the influence they've been able to have to say, hey, we did not allow shame to carry into our marriage. We did not hold that against ourselves. We said we made a mistake. That is not the way God designed it, but we're going to continue to live for God, and we're going to watch him do a work in our marriage. And man, God has done such a work through them. They have incredible kids. They have an unbelievable marriage. They're in full-time ministry while running a business. Like,
Incredible
their
fruit in their
story
life.
is the fruit is unbelievable.
Yeah.
So that can be your story. Like, please do not allow guilt or shame or the fact that you didn't do it the way God ordained it, or you didn't do it the way God had planned it, to put you in a place where it's like, well, I guess I can experience the blessing of God. Like God, like that the blessing of God can cover a multitude of sins.
Yes, it does.
And he will continue to bless your marriage the moment that you begin to diligently seek him. He is a rewarder of those who diligently seek him, no matter when you decide to seek him. Just decide now that you're going to make it right now, right? Like, hopefully this conversation will push you in a direction to say, you know what? I can have a healthy sex life. I can have a healthy relationship with sex, a healthy idea of sex. Whether you are if you're a single person, take this to heart for when you're married and realize that the promises we're talking about and the benefits that we're talking about, we believe biblically are saved for married couples and are saved for a monogamous relationship.
Yeah.
And for people who have committed to one another. And there's a reason that our bodies react the way they react. And there's a reason that sex has the benefits that it has. Yeah. And there's a reason that we're so excited to talk about it. Not just because it feels good, not because it's a good time, but because there really are benefits to it. And it really can bless your marriage. It can really be a blessing to you. And it can get you, it can help through conflict. It can help through hard seasons. It can help through many things that we'll talk about here in just a moment.
Yeah, and even if you don't have a great sex life now, if you haven't had a great sex life within your marriage, today's a great day to start.
Absolutely.
You can work toward having a great, healthy understanding of all the benefits that the Lord has in sex and all the benefits that it can bring to your marriage. So that's what we're going to dive into.
Realize also, again, we'll probably get into this, but realize also that a great sex life doesn't mean the most frequent sex life.
Oh, that's
right.
good.
It's not like, oh, we have sex 5 times a day, so we have a great sex life, or we have sex 5 times a week, so we have a great sex life, or whatever.
Some people wouldn't mind that.
Wouldn't mind what?
A high frequency.
Some people in relationships prefer a higher frequency than other people in relationships. That is true, babe.
That
Great
is true.
point.
Great point. Wow.
But don't boil your sex life down to how often you're having sex. That is not the marker of how healthy your sex life is.
Yeah.
Because life is seasonal and sex is seasonal. There are times where it's like, hey, I'm exhausted, you're exhausted. Like, we're in a season where we've really got to work to have a frequent sex life.
Not that it ever should take a total back seat.
No.
And be put on the back burner, but understanding that, the ebbs and flows of life, like having a baby,
Sure,
may put a kink in things for a while.
Yeah.
No pun intended.
No pun intended on the kinks. Okay. Number one, our first point today as we talk about sex is we have to realize that
Come back from that.
you can come back from that. We got this. You ready?
Okay.
Let's bring it back. This is going to bring it back right here. Sex is a gift from God.
All right, there it is.
It's a gift from God. It is. From the very beginning of time, God, Moses said in the book of Genesis, this is for this reason, a man shall leave his father and mother and cleave to his wife, and the two shall become one. He's talking about a physical becoming one there. There is a physical bond that happens when you have sex. Obviously, if you understand the human body, you understand that when if a woman has saved herself from marriage, the first time a woman has sex, something happens, right, physically, where there is a cutting involved, and there is typically a little bit of pain involved, and sometimes there's a bleeding involved.
It's a blood covenant.
And that it's a blood covenant. This is a picture of what God created. I understand that that can look like just pain, or it can look like it can look like a negative thing. It's a picture. It's a picture that God created to say this is a physical representation of what you're doing. That this is sacrifice and this is covenant. And that this is something that is only supposed to happen one time with one person. Again, we're not speaking shame on anybody that has ever stepped outside of that idea of sex or of God's plan for sex. But it's just showing you how intentional God was in creating this plan. And so sex is a gift from God. It's something that he gave to the union, the covenant of marriage that he created and ordained. And it's very special and it's very significant. Don't think that sex is just sex. It's not just two bodies coming together. Like, this is a very big deal. And God proved that with the way that he blessed married couples in the very beginning. This is one of the many ways that you become one, and one of the most significant ways that you become one.
Yeah, next I would say sex helps you avoid temptation.
Yes, for sure.
Temptation is still going to come, of course. We're always tempted daily in different areas. But when that physical desire that is there from the Lord is being met, it's so much easier to turn our eyes away from that temptation.
Yes.
One of the ways that I love that you have always communicated, I mean, even before kids, but to our boys, you've talked with them so much about what they look at, and when they see someone who dresses inappropriately, or times that you've been watching UFC fights and the ring girls come on, immediately you look away. Or if we're out in public and there's a distraction, not the girls ever dress inappropriately or only wear crop tops, but that you dart your eyes and you choose to look away. And I would think that is so much easier to do when that desire is being met.
For sure. And, one thing that I encourage single men with, and I encourage our sons with this as well, and I've got something for women too. For men, don't think that temptation is sin, and don't think that just because you have a desire that you're wrong for having that desire.
Right.
That what I tell our sons, or what I tell single men that I counsel with, is that God put an appetite on the inside of you. It's just not your time to eat. Right? Like, that appetite is good. The hunger is good, but it's not your time to eat. Your time to fulfill that desire and fulfill that appetite is within a marriage. And you fulfill it in a way that your wife is comfortable with, right? Like, we're going to talk about that, about communicating within, about your sexual relationship. So for men, to see, I'm not afraid to see something. I'm not afraid to see a girl that's dressed inappropriately, but I'm always going to check my heart and make sure that I am not looking after women to lust after them, because Jesus said if you do it in your heart, right? Like if I see something and it sparks something, it's like, oh, that initial temptation's like, well, that's not from the Lord.
Right.
And so I'm going to always try to turn my eyes from it. And like, we don't watch movies that have nudity in it. We don't watch TV shows that have nudity. It's like, yeah, if I can't avoid it, I will avoid it. You can't always avoid it, but you can definitely look away. You don't want to make people feel uncomfortable or whatever, but look a girl in the eyes, right? Like, show respect, show a mutual respect for other people. And women and guys too, this isn't just for women. Your body is valuable. And when you dress like that, you're communicating value and you're devaluing yourself. Like, women, you are so valuable, and God has created your body to share with your spouse. And so it's something that you need to retain. Like, not everyone gets the honor of being able to see that.
Yeah.
Not everyone gets the honor of being able to experience that. And when you put it on display, you're communicating value, right? And I understand that you should be proud of your body. You should be proud of the skin that you're in, and you shouldn't be afraid, or whatever. You shouldn't be afraid of the comments of other people or whatever. I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is communicate the value that God has placed on your life. No, this isn't for everyone. You don't get to see this part of me. You don't get to see these things because I carry value, and I'm going to communicate that value with the way that I dress and the way that I treat myself and the way that I see myself, right? I think that people want to be valued so badly that they'll put themselves in a situation that actually devalue them.
Absolutely.
Because God has created the opportunity for value to be expressed within a marriage. And that is where it's supposed to be expressed. And so, yeah, the Word of God talks about avoiding temptation. 1 Corinthians 7:5. So I'm reading out of the NLT. I'm going to read 3 through 5. So it says, the husband should fulfill his wife's sexual needs, and the wife should fulfill her husband's needs. The wife gives authority over of her body over to her husband. The husband gives authority over his body to his wife. Do not deprive each other of sexual relations unless you both agree to refrain from sexual intimacy for a limited time, so you can give yourselves more completely to prayer, right? He talks about the refraining isn't because you don't feel good. It isn't because you're busy. It isn't because you don't have time for it or whatever. It's because you're devoting yourself to the work of the Lord. And then he says this, but afterward, you should come together again so that Satan won't be able to tempt you because of your lack of self-control. You're like, listen, we know you lack self-control. I know you, and I know that you're tempted. I know that when you go without it, you're going to be tempted to go seek it elsewhere. I know that when you go without it, you're going to be tempted to get it in any way possible. And so come back together with your spouse. Make that commitment that it's like, no, I'm going to meet that need for you. Like, that is my duty to meet that need for you, and I want to do that for you.
I love that these verses, it feels like they kind of level the playing field, because I think that when it comes to sex, it's easy to be like, oh, well, the man is the one who has the greater need, and the woman is only there just to meet that need. And these verses, it says, the wife gives authority over her body to her husband, and the husband gives authority over his body to his wife. Do not deprive each other unless you both agree. It really puts us on the same playing field. It's
your duty to not deprive. It's also your duty to, I just had the word that I'm looking for, to not take advantage of. Right?
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
As husbands and wives, we don't take advantage of the fact that the word says that we give authority of our bodies to one another. When I give you the authority of something, I am trusting you with that. And I am trusting that you're going to take great care of it. So giving the authority of your body over to your spouse is not just like you're a tool to be used. This is trust. This is communicating trust, saying, I trust that you're going to use that authority well, right? And so, I want to speak to marriages. If you feel unsafe in your marriage, or if you feel like your spouse is taking advantage of you, you need to seek counsel.
Yes.
And you need to seek help. And maybe it's because of something that happened to you in the past that maybe you always feel taken advantage of in a sexual relationship, no matter what it looks like. Maybe it's because your spouse isn't honoring you well, and your spouse is taking advantage of that dominion that God has created in a marriage. That is a good thing, but it's a good thing when used correctly,
right?
Not when taken out of context. Right. And so we need to meet each other's needs, not make each other meet our needs. Yeah. Sex is is about meeting the needs of your spouse. That's how this is communicated, right? That I've given you authority and I'm meeting your needs. That is, sex should be a mutual meeting of each other's needs, it's not something that I take from you. It's something that I give to you.
That's
and I
so
want it
good.
to be a gift. God has created it to be a gift. And another verse is Hebrews 13:4 says, give honor to marriage and remain faithful to one another in marriage. God will surely judge the immoral and those who commit adultery. The way that you stay away from being judged and being immoral and committing adultery is being faithful to one another. The way you remain faithful to one another is to have these conversations and to realize the benefits of sex and to have healthy conversations about them and create a healthy sexual relationship within your relationship.
Yeah.
It's a
Okay,
big deal.
next.
Let's talk about some of the benefits.
Sex begets sex.
Sex begets sex. Yes,
The
absolutely.
more you have it, the more you want it.
Yes.
The less you have it, the less you want it.
That's correct. And this is a studies show
Yes.
this fact that there are hormones released in your body. We're going to get into some of those hormones in just a moment. But there's a hormone called dopamine. Everyone's heard of dopamine, right? Like that dopamine rush. You get a like on Instagram, you see something that's like, that's the do it again hormone. And that dopamine hormone is released whenever you orgasm, either party. And so that dopamine release is something that makes you desire that moment again.
Right.
And so whenever you are creating frequency in your sexual relationship, it only begets more frequency because the more that you have it, the more that you realize. I think there's been times in our lives where we've gotten really busy and then we finally had that moment and it's like, God, why don't we do this more? like just the relief that you have and you sleep better and like it just kind of, there can be like, we can just be kind of at each other and annoying each other. And then you have this moment together and it's like, you know what, that really wasn't nearly as big of a deal as I made it. And it just kind of wipes some stuff away and clears the air. And I believe, again, that's a gift from God. Like what happens hormonally and in your body is a gift from God to breathe life into your marriage. And sex can be that. This area that can sometimes be frustrating, that can sometimes be an area, a source of pain, really is designed by God to be the opposite. And we're going to talk about some of those physical benefits that sex offers us. Do you have anything else to say about the fact that?
Yeah, I mean, I was just thinking about like sex is not just about sex. It's about the connection that happens. I mean, it's part of the two becoming one.
Yes.
You know, there
For
is
sure.
something spiritual that happens. Of course, there are the physical things that come along with it and those benefits. But man, that spiritual oneness that you only experience with your spouse is irreplaceable.
Yes.
And it is such a place of honor because when you experience that with your spouse and no one else, it only tightens your bond that much more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Nothing will, I mean, communication obviously is something that we hit on all the time. Communication will strengthen your bond like no other, being able to have honest conversations. But sex is one of those things that it's I don't want to call it a quick fix because that sounds negative, but it really can quickly just kind of open your eyes to what really matters, right? It's like it does deepen your connection, deepen your intimacy, and allows you to say, you know what, I do love you, and I do love this connection with you, and it just kind of wipes away some of the things that don't matter.
Yeah.
And so let's talk about some more of the realistic, like physical benefits. I talked about dopamine, oxytocin, testosterone, all of these things. We'll kind of break a few of them down, but really do have positive physical attributes and benefits to our bodies.
Yeah.
And they're all released through sex.
Yeah. So stress reduction.
Yep.
That's a huge one.
Big one.
We've all
Yeah.
got stress coming at us from, everywhere, raising kids and running a home and juggling all the things, and sex immediately reduces stress. Also a pain reliever.
This is wild. Like we obviously doing research to do this podcast, like, okay, we knew there were physical benefits. We're looking into it. Pain relief.
Pain relief. So it triggers the release of endorphins and other neurochemicals that act as natural painkillers. Specifically, oxytocin has been linked to pain relief in headaches.
Isn't
that funny?
Headaches. If kids are number one in stopping you from having sex, headaches got to be number two. right? Like, I don't know if that's for every marriage. To be honest, if I'm being honest, I'm being a little bit transparent here. That is not you. Like, you are not one to use headaches against me. But
we
it's
hear
just an ongoing joke. I feel like in
Sure.
all of society, like really, I don't know. There's a movie, I've actually never seen it. I've only seen the clip of a married couple talking, and he's like, "What do you think? You want to have sex tonight?" And she's like, "I don't know. I'm a little gassy and I kind of have a headache. Do you feel like?" He's like, "Well, not now." It's like the headaches, the way your body feels, joints and pain, and I just don't feel. It's like our bodies can tell us that we don't want sex, or our headaches can tell us like, I'm just not really feeling it. I have a headache. Oh, good. You have a headache. That's more of a reason to have sex then.
Right.
That is more of a reason. Like, great. Let me relieve your headache. Like, let's relieve your headache together. Right. Like, it is. You want to relieve a headache? Ibuprofen and, a little sexy time. The best pain relief on the planet. Oxytocin. Also, improved immune function. Regular sexual activity may help boost the immune system. May help boost the immune system by promoting the release of the beneficial hormones that we're talking about. Improved cardiovascular health. It's a workout, obviously. And so, it's going to improve your heart health. We've read studies where people, we've talked about frequency, but married couples that do have a higher frequency do have a longer lifespan. It does help your heart. It does help. Obviously, it helps with your blood pressure, lowering, can't get that word out, blood pressure. And obviously, it increases heart health, heart activity. Your heart rate goes up, and so it's a good thing.
Want to live a long time? Have a lot of sex?
Long time, have more sex. Better sleep. There's a hormone called prolactin. It's a hormone that's released during this phase of sex that is linked to a feeling of satisfaction and relaxation. And so it's linked to better sleep. You want to have better sleep? Have more sex.
Yeah, and it kind of on the heels of that, I mean, ladies, if you want to have vulnerable conversation with your husband, there is no better time than after sex, which is funny because they are relaxed and, maybe feeling a little sleepy. But I am telling you, the openness that a husband has after sex, so much more. So
sure.
Save that conversation. Butter him up in the bedroom and then have that hard conversation. I can promise you it's going to go a lot smoother.
Women feel the emotion and then desire sex. Men feel the sex and then desire emotion.
That is so good.
Women get emotional, then get sexual. Men get sexual, then get emotional. It's just a natural, men feel it, right? Or they experience it and then they have the feeling. Women want the feeling once they've built up the experience and once they've built up that desire.
That's why we always hear sex starts in the kitchen.
Starts in the kitchen. Yep.
Wow.
So, yeah. Closeness and intimacy. This is such a big one. And we're going to sit here for just a moment and talk about intimacy. But the hormone called vasopressin, that is the bonding hormone. Babe, you've done a ton of study on this. Do you want to talk about this for a moment?
Vasopressin is also referred to as the glue that happens. And so after sex, this bonding hormone is released, and this blows my mind. There have even been studies that have shown that when a man is shown photos of women and he gets to the photo of a woman that he has had sex with, there are different triggers that go off in his brain. There's an uptick in his brain activity just from seeing a photo of a woman that he has been intimate with.
Especially someone that he has been monogamously intimate with several times. Only increases the release of that hormone.
I mean, if that's not glue in a marriage, I don't know what is.
Yeah. If you feel disconnected and you want to feel that bond and that closeness and that intimacy, this is it's funny because sex is the hardest thing to do when you feel disconnected. It's I don't want to be physical with you. That's a very intimate place.
It feels very vulnerable.
Feels very vulnerable, right? And so it's you don't necessarily desire that when you feel the distance between one another. It's that's why people say we're sleeping in separate bedrooms. That's one of the kind of covenants that we made with one another when we got married. It's hey, no matter how hard it gets, we're never going to sleep in opposite bedrooms. Now, obviously on the occasion that we fall asleep rubbing a kid's back, putting them back to sleep, it happens, but we have decided I'm never going to sleep on the couch. I'm never going to put you on the couch. We're never going to sleep in opposite bedrooms. We will always go to bed together.
And there have definitely been times that it could have merited that.
sure.
that we could have justified reasons not to sleep in the same
For sure.
bed, but that was something that we established ahead of time. I think establishing those non-negotiables in your marriage before you walk into that battle is so powerful, because
Yes.
then once you're there, you already know what's on the table.
Yes, and it plays into deciding not to go to bed angry, because if I'm in bed with you, we're gonna talk it out.
Yeah.
If we're laying here, right, I've got to lay next to you because I made a commitment. All right, then we're gonna talk it out. And I think a lot of times that has caused us to resolve things where, had I just gone and slept in another bedroom, or had you done that, we would have never resolved it, or definitely would never resolved it as quickly as we did.
Not that you always get to all the answers.
No, not at all.
But just getting your heart posture in a better place. And I mean, praying together. Oof,
Yeah.
that's a good one. To just pray together to kind of release that tension. It's hard to pray for somebody. It's hard to pray with someone that you have offense toward.
Yes, but it does, that will also lead you, like, making that decision now, and making the decision that maybe that forces you into moments of intimacy where it's like, you know what, we do need to come back together, right? Even though we're still angry, even though this still hurts, whatever. This is how the Lord designed us, and this is a gift that the Lord gave us. Like, let's appreciate the gift, and let's honor God with that gift. It really does honor God. Like, whenever your sexual relationship with your spouse is healthy, it does honor God. Your marriage honors God, and this honors God, because it's a gift from Him.
Yeah. Let's talk about intimacy.
Yep.
Because sex and intimacy are not the same thing.
No, they're not. And like I said, women do things because they feel it. Men do things, then feel it. And that speaks to kind of how men and women see intimacy. And this isn't like, that's not every man and woman. That's
Sure.
not every relationship, but typically that's how it works. And so I think that speaks to just kind of how men and women see intimacy, or feel intimacy, experience intimacy differently. We're very different creatures.
Yeah.
And so we experience that differently.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that, movies and TV shows and songs, like we were talking about, they paint this picture of marriage always being this like mutual, instant, sparks flying, type of situation. And in reality, it's not always that.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's a choice to be intimate even when we don't feel like it, but we choose to prefer our spouse over what we're feeling.
Right. Yeah, I think being able, again, this comes down, we're going to talk about just having healthy conversations about initiation, who initiates, how do you initiate, what will put you in the mood, what puts you in a place to desire sex, what puts you in a place to want to initiate, right? And how to do that the right way. And I think that, like you said, the media and movies tries to make sex this, it's always mutual. It's always a big deal. It's all, it's like, man, that's just not how it is. Like, if your parents, sometimes you just got to plan it. It's like, hey, Tuesday at 8 p.m., that's our night. Like, it's not going to be this crazy spontaneous moment. It's like, no, we plan it, it's like, sometimes you just got to put it on the schedule. And that is like the least sexy, least romantic thing. But it's like, hey, if it creates that moment for us, then it is worth it. And it doesn't have to always be spontaneous and this grander, like, gesture, amazing, mutual. We're both feeling it, and we vibing with each other, and we catch eyes across the room. Like, it doesn't have to be that. It can be something where it's like, hey, let's make time for one another. We need this. Like let's make it happen. And so you just plan it out and make it happen and keep your word, right? Like, plan a date night, plan that moment. And make it happen, and that leads to the spontaneous, and that will lead you to, it just becomes easier. We talked about sex begets sex. It just maybe you are in a season where you've got to plan it every time, and but doing that allows for the spontaneous moments to be like, oh, we're good at this now. Like, this comes easy now, right? Or easier than it did.
And even having conversations surrounding it, I feel like it's easier.
Yeah.
That was an area that we sucked at the beginning. Like, I don't know why, just talking about sex and our own needs and desires it was so difficult to communicate. I think
there's shame that comes along with, like, we were both raised in Christian homes.
Yeah.
We were both raised in great youth groups, and we're both raised in the 90s and the I Kiss Dating Goodbye movement, right? And so it's like that whole purity movement I think gave us a little bit of an unhealthy relationship with sex and a little bit of an unhealthy view. I think that a lot of men were like, oh, I can't date, I can't have sex, I'll just watch porn then, right? Just turn to pornography just to be able to meet this desire somehow, I'm not hurting anybody, and it's like, and then you begin to form an addiction to that, and you realize that that's not the same thing, right?
Well, and I think for girls, if you're raised in the church, we're taught so much to resist. And I think that without realizing it, we can form this negative
For sure.
outlook on sex and what it is. And so we work so hard to resist. And then all of a sudden we get married and we're expect to desire. And when it's not there, it feels shameful,
Right.
something that we tried so hard to avoid, all of a sudden we're supposed to embrace. And I think that it's easy to get lost in feeling shame with that.
Yeah. Hey, anyone ever, this is a weird example, but I'm going to use it. Anyone ever been to another country where they drive on the opposite side of the road and the opposite side of the car, right? It's like I've spent my whole life driving this way. And then you go to another country, the car is small, the road is small, I'm on the opposite side, I'm driving on the opposite side of the road. It's like everything about this feels foreign. Nothing about this is comfortable, right? Everything about, like, making a right turn is so much is so much harder when I'm on the opposite side of the car, on the opposite side of the road with traffic coming at me, right? It's like all of the roundabout, it's so stressful and it's uncomfortable and it doesn't feel right. Why? Because I was trained to do this way. I was trained that this is how you do it, right? Like you sit on this side of the car, you drive on this side of the road, and whenever you're put in a situation where everything is opposite of what you don't feel comfortable. How could you?
We have to work so hard to unlearn some of those things that were so deep seated in us. And maybe you've been married for 10 years and sex is still difficult for you. There may be some things that were from your teenage years, from, being taught a certain way that you now, 10 years in, have to unlearn. And it's not too late. It's not too late to seek the Lord and figure out how to let go of some of those, dare I say, strongholds that can prevent you from walking in the fullness that the Lord has intended for your sex life.
Yeah, that's really good. There's no shame in sex in a marriage relationship.
Yeah.
And you've got to be able to realize that and see that in God's word and realize that this is a gift from Him and that He has designed you to experience this intimacy and He has designed you to enjoy that intimacy and to enjoy that moment. And man, it's a blessing. And so you need to embrace that.
Yeah.
So what do we need to do? We need to plan. If you may need to plan, we need to talk these things out. Like, don't be afraid to talk about sex. So many of the difficult, areas that you navigate in your sexual life, your sexual intimacy with your spouse can be handled with just a conversation. Just saying like, hey, that doesn't really work for me. Hey, I don't love that. Or, hey, I really do love this. Or, hey, when you do that, it does not in any way make me want to be intimate, right? Or like whatever that is, having these conversations of like, hey, I'll be honest, I feel a little shame afterwards. Oh no, what are you thinking?
I'm just thinking about the amount of times that I've just told you when you make like a, not a sex joke, but just like, well, you know what I'm talking about. Like, you're laughing. You know what I'm talking about.
Oh,
just
man.
those like, drop it. I'll say something about, we'll be cooking dinner and I'll say something and you turn it sexual somehow.
Yeah.
And I mean, the amount of times I've just said, hey, that's not the way.
That is not the way.
That does not check my box. But you've grown a lot in that area.
Grown.
I mean,
I still make dumb jokes
it's
for sure.
still comedic relief here and there, but yeah, it doesn't fuel my fire.
Yeah, no, that's not it. That's not it. Having those conversations, being honest about it, me thinking that, oh, I'm gonna make this joke and she's gonna be like, dang, like.
Because that's exactly how I would respond.
Me thinking that, and then you saying, hey, that doesn't work. Like, hey, that is not what I'm thinking. Hey, like, I think much less of you when you make those jokes than when you don't. It's like, oh, all right, got to find another avenue,
But if you
want
to come do these dishes,
yeah. How about you shut your mouth and do the dishes? that would do it for me,
check.
Yeah. Starts in the kitchen,
Oh my gosh. Okay. So, how can we apply this? How can we make our marriage great?
Man, talk about it.
Yeah.
talk about it. We've actually got a list of questions here, and we'll list these questions in the description. But questions for married couples to just make your sex life more comfortable, make the conversation more comfortable. Number one, I'll say this before I get into the questions. Like, don't take yourself so seriously. And your sex life is serious. It's a big deal.
Yeah.
But be able, like, allow yourself to laugh about it. Allow yourself to say, hey, we suck at that, or hey, we could improve on this, or whatever. Like, allow yourself to be open and honest with one another, to admit that some things can be awkward, to admit that some situations can be awkward. Like, it can, and we have to be able to admit that, and we have to be honest with ourselves. So don't take yourself so seriously whenever you have these conversations, and just be honest with one another. So some of the questions that we have: what do you need in order to be in the mood for sex? It's definitely not sex jokes, that's for sure. What do you need in order to put yourself in that mood? Do you feel comfortable initiating sex? Why or why not? How do you prefer to be initiated? If I'm the initiator, how do you prefer it? If you're the initiator, how do you prefer to initiate it? Right? Like, just having like, well, what are your cues?
Yes.
You know, like I may be trying to give a cue and you have no idea.
That is a
and
huge
vice versa.
one. We have had to have conversations about that, because there have been times that one of us maybe was putting out cues and pursuing each other, and the other one had no clue.
Right.
No clue that was the intention. And then they feel rejection, which was never the intention. It's like, I didn't know that's what that meant.
Well, we have these conversations like, man, you haven't come on to me in however long. And it's like, I came on to you every night. I did this and this and this. And it's like, oh, I didn't know that's what that was, you know? And it's like, one of us is feeling a sense of rejection. The other one is feeling not pursued.
A sense of rejection.
Not pursued. Yeah, exactly. A sense of rejection as well. It's like, well, you're not pursuing me. It's like, I am, and you're rejecting me. It's like, oh, how are you pursuing me?
Yeah.
Like, I need to know so that I don't reject it next time, or so that I let you know, hey, that doesn't do anything for me.
Yeah.
Like, that's not how I want to be pursued. And there's a little bit of give and take, right? Like, I want to pursue you the way you want to be pursued. But there's also cues that I just naturally give that are like, hey, this is my sign that I'm pursuing you. You know what I mean? Like, and so you've got to be able to communicate that. Communicate, hey, this is what that means. Or, hey, how do you want me to initiate that? Because I need to know so that I can do a better job of that.
And that feels so elementary, but we have to lay it out for each
Got
other.
to.
We
Yeah.
can't read each other's minds.
No, make it simple. Keep it simple, stupid. How often do you prefer or expect sex? Have those conversations with one another. Every couple is different. Don't compare yourselves among yourselves. Don't compare your sexual relationship. First of all, that is something that like we don't discuss. Or obviously we're discussing sex here, but we don't discuss details about our sex life with anybody.
No.
Nobody. Like, that is ours, and we deal with that. I will discuss topics with guys that mentor me or with guys that I mentor. I can discuss big picture. We can talk about some of the things from the word, but we are not talking about our frequency or how we do what we do. Like, none of that. That is not a conversation for anybody but us.
No.
And so make sure that you protect this part of your relationship and protect the sanctity of it. Like, it's a big deal.
It's protecting your spouse.
Yes, for sure.
You know, I mean, why would you ever want to paint a picture in someone else's head of what your spouse is like in the bedroom?
Yeah, for sure.
That's not honoring. at all.
No, not at all. So make sure that you have these conversations and don't compare yourself to anybody else.
Yeah.
Don't compare. You know, we have friends that joke about it, and you know, that's neither here nor there. But we have friends that joke about, you know, how often they do or don't, whatever, and we let them joke and we let them say what they want to say, and we just don't comment on it,
Yeah.
and we just don't give our 2 cents or talk about how it works for us. It's like, hey, we just don't go there. Sorry. And then we don't compare ourselves. You know what I mean? With anything that anyone else says. What sexual activities do you enjoy the most? What do you enjoy and what do you not enjoy? Right? Like, what is a turn off for you? What is it that shuts you down a little bit? And it's like, hey, that's not my thing. Like, I don't enjoy that. Have those conversations. And if it's conflicting, be willing to have conversations and draw boundaries. Just say, hey, this is my line. I'm sorry. I'm not going to cross this line. And even if there are conflicting, you know, desires, there can be give and take there, but you also need to feel respected and honored. And so you need to be able to say, hey, I'm willing to give here, not willing to give here.
Right.
And have those conversations and be honest about them. How could you each contribute to making your sexual relationship more satisfying for one another? Man, have these conversations, ask each other these questions, and then do it.
Yeah.
Put it
And
to
if
work.
this feels like kind of a area that maybe is weird or uncomfortable to talk about, honestly, shameless plug. We have a free resource on our website, 75 Fun and Flirty Ways to Keep the Spark Alive in Your Marriage. Print that out or pull it up on your phone and go through those with each other. Like, hey, this idea, like, is this something that would work for you? Or is that, because all of those, all 75 aren't going to work for everyone, but like go through them together even and say like, what areas in here would be something that would like push us toward deeper intimacy, that would make you want to have sex with me more? Like, is it this? Is it this? And I mean, obviously, if you don't know your love language yet, that's a huge one too, that can help kind of warm things up before you get to the bedroom. So jump over to our website, greatermarriage.com. You can download that for free. You can also subscribe to just find out about anything that we have going on. We're going to have more resources coming out that we're excited about. So thanks for tuning in and having a sex talk with us.
Yeah, hey, go put in the work and have the hard conversations.
Yeah.
And man, we are praying for you guys. We're believing for you guys. If you need anything at all, please reach out to us. Connect at greatermarriage.com is our email address that you can reach us at. Or just drop us a comment on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook. Man, we want to connect with you guys, and we want to have honest conversations with you guys. And we just so appreciate you being here. Have a great day. Have a great rest of your day. And I almost say, as you go preach. That's what our church says. That's our thing at church. That's how we close every sermon. As you go preach. As you go preach and as you go, be great.